Hi everyone, Helen Blunden here. I hope you're happy, healthy and well. Today I want to talk about a book haul. I have been buying books since before Christmas and I've got a mix of some new and old books. Now, as I've mentioned previously, I don't always buy new books simply because they are very, very expensive here in Australia. However, when I do buy them, it is because for one reason, and that reason is I want them on my collection. So I have a collection of Murakami books, I have a collection of George Orwell, Ernest Hemingway. So these are the books that I want to keep and hold, and I know that I'm going to read them over and over in the coming years. So today I want to just talk about this book haul that I have. And in particular, I'm interested to know whether you have read these books, whether you have read these authors. If you haven't read these books, but you've read some of their other works, please let me know. But in particular, I actually want to know why these authors or why these books have resonated with you. What were the reasons? What kind of impacts did they make to your life? What were the things that really stood out for you? What were the lessons that they gave you for your life? That's the stuff I'm more interested in, simply because that's where we could start the exchange of ideas. And also, I go into the book with the knowledge of a completely different perspective that kind of also adds on to my own perspective as well. So the more the merrier, I'd say. So let's start with the first book. Now, this book I bought in Canberra at a vintage shop. We call them like a bric-a-brac store or an op shop. That's where you could find secondhand books, secondhand clothes. That's where a lot of people kind of get rid of all their household goods and sell them for very cheap. And usually when you go to these places, you can find bargains with books. Now, a lot of the books that are at these places are really general popular fiction. Very rarely would you find some good classics. But in this Canberra bookstore, I found this one by Catherine Mansfield, and I remembered reading about her, somewhere that I was reading about Virginia Woolf, and Virginia Woolf really liked Catherine Mansfield's writing. Catherine Mansfield was a writer in the 1920s. She's New Zealand based as well. So we get a perspective of New Zealand, which is a country that I have been to and I have travelled extensively, but I don't read their writers. And so Catherine Mansfield, given that Virginia Woolf was really quite jealous of her, and I thought I have to read a book from that genre. We're talking about D.H. Lawrence, Virginia Woolf, Catherine, they were all of the same ilk. And her life story is very interesting. She strikes me as very much an artistic, very free person. She did have some troubles in her life with the various men in her life as well. At one stage, she was also drugged and raped, and she became pregnant. She jilted someone who she didn't really want to marry at the altar. Like, there's a big story for her. So I'm really looking forward to reading her book, simply also to understand more about maybe some New Zealand context, New Zealand setting. Now, the next one is, again, I bought from the same place, is The Theban Plays by Sophocles. In particular, this has 3 plays, but the plays I'm interested obviously are Antigone and Oedipus, the story of King Oedipus. I've not read these books. I know generally what they're about. I come from a Greek background. I haven't even read them in Greek either, so it's poor for me to do this. I'm in particular interested with this one because at the moment I am reading, based on a whole heap of recommendations from everyone out there. They told me, you got to read Kafka on the Shore, you got to read Kafka on the Shore. So I'm reading it, as you can see, and I'm nearly finished, and I'm hoping that all the pieces fall into place, because this is magical realism, but there is a strong I guess, emphasis on what happens with the Theban plays. Hang on, I think my little phone is getting very wonky here, so I'm going to just do that. All right. I've got a bit of sticky tape on the window and my iPhone is up against it. The joys of videography, right? Not that I'm a videographer. Anyway, so the next one is I bought new. This is Madame Bovary by Flaubert. Now, the reason I bought this obviously is because everyone raves about this book, and it was one of the best Flaubert, most memorable novels. However, I was reading Julian Barnes' Flaubert's Parrot, and I got a few pages into that, and I thought, my God, I don't even know what he's talking about here, simply because I had no context about Gustave Flaubert. I hadn't read his books. So I thought I'm going to at least start on this one. About a young lady who is from a Normandy farm who dreams of marriage but somehow gets disheartened and disappointed when she gets married, so she goes off to Paris. And this had a big, I guess, rap in the, I think it was written in the 1850s, and back then probably this shocked Parisians and shocked French people, I don't know why, about the obscenity and the adulterous nature of this woman. I'm interested in reading this, and also the book I bought again from Canberra for a couple of dollars. Okay, sorry, $3.99 was Henry James' The Portrait of a Lady, which I think would be very similar to this book. We're talking about a time when there was, I guess, there wasn't female independence, but there was the question of, you know, the independence of women, or should they be dependent on the men in their lives. Henry James, as I understand it, had also met Gustave Flaubert when he was in Paris. I think he had also written some articles about Flaubert and had his own impressions of a man who seemed to be, I don't know, for an active imagination, he always seemed to be quite sick and quite insular and quite inside himself. So Portrait of a Lady, Henry James, American, and this one, I think they should be read together. So that's what I'm going to aim to do. The next one is Montesquieu. Now, this one was written he was a Baron of Montesquieu. I think his name was Charles Sadat. He has written this book called Persian Letters about two guys in the 1700s. I think it was written in the 1750s. About leaving their seraglio, leaving their harems, leaving his 5 wives and going with a friend of his. There was Uzbek and Rico, his friend, going to Paris and seeing what life in Paris was about. And these are the letters he's writing back home to his wife. Now, I didn't know that Roxanne, the legend of Roxanne, she was one of the wives in this harem. So I think the legend of Roxanne comes from this. Don't quote me on that. I started reading this in Canberra. It was really interesting, but I haven't gone through it. Sometimes I start to read a book, just the first few chapters, just to see the cadence, the rhythm, the style of writing. And if I get into it, I know, great, this is on a winner. And I think this is going to be a winner for me. I put it aside simply because I had other books to read with our book clubs, but I'll pick this one up again. And what really struck me about this was the life of women in harems. I mean, talk about independent women or being dependent on their wives. So this would actually...
A few moments later.
There was a bit of an accident there. So I think these books all will really show me, I guess, the not the views of women, the views of women's independence by the men in their lives in the 1700s and 1800s. Okay, the next one is Italo Calvino's Palomar. Mr. Palomar. Have you read this book? Now, I have done a review on Invisible Cities, and I loved Invisible Cities. I raved about the book. I would say Invisible Cities is one of the best books I have read in my life. This one strikes me as very similar because it is about Mr. Palomar, and he has these powers of observation, and he sees things around him, and he expresses them in such beautiful ways. So, it's Mr. Palomar at the beach and what he sees at the beach, Mr. Palomar in the gardens and what he sees in the gardens, in the market, and so forth. So I think this is going to be very similar to Invisible Cities, and I'm looking forward to reading this so much. If you haven't read Invisible Cities, I highly recommend it. I'll try and put a link up somewhere so you could see my review on it. Now, the next one is David Malouf, The Conversations at Curlew Creek. If you don't know who David Malouf is, he's a very well-known master author, master at writing. He's also a poet as well. He's Australian, and I would highly recommend his books.
One eternity later.
Esteemed prizes in literature, and he too is also someone who I am trying to build a collection of his books here. These books I find at secondhand bookstores all the time. Obviously, there are people out there who don't want to collect these or don't want them in their libraries for whatever reason, but I'm glad I can always find a David Malouf novel somewhere. I would highly recommend this author if you want lyrical, poetic, very evocative writing. This particular one is a story of someone who's in a prison in 1820s in New South Wales. He's an escaped convict turned bushranger, and he has these conversations with his jailer. So they tend to go in deep. The type of writing that David Malouf does, as I mentioned, quite evocative. A lot of his writing is all about, I guess, human relationships, and also a very strong sense of place. He writes a lot about Australia, but he has written on different topics as well. These are beautiful stories, very deep, and make you think long and hard after you read them. So very highly recommend David Malouf's works, any works of his. Now, the next one is based on a recommendation by the community here on YouTube when I sent out a survey, which I use the community section in this YouTube channel to try and capture polls about what you're reading and what I could be reading next. And many of you mentioned that, don't read Kafka on the Shore. It's not as good as the Wind-Up Bird Chronicle. Both of these books are magical realism. So if that's not for you, maybe don't read these. But I'm going through this one quite deeply, and I'm trying to grapple with the symbology and what it all means. So I have this assumption that this one will also be the same. So the Wind-Up Bird Chronicle, this one has got a reading edition. I bought this new simply because I want Murakami in my collection. All right. The next one is A Round of Golf by Tommy Amor. He's someone who won a lot of golfing championships in the 1920s in Europe. And this one is a book I found at a secondhand bookstore for a couple of dollars, and immediately got it simply because I'm a golfer. Now, for those of you who think golf is a boring game, well, it might be to some. That's, your call. I got into golf a couple of years ago simply because I joined not a club, it was a program that introduced women into golf, and we went as a group. And at the end of that group and that 3-month program, which was, I would say, quite intensive, with a mix of on-course clinics, one-on-one sessions, range sessions, mentoring as well, and also group clinics. It was one of the best introducing women into golfing program. And because we went through as a group of 25 women, at the end of it, the golf club had offered us a reduced membership, which we all took on. And so now I have a group of women that I play golf with who are now my friends, and we are all learning golf together and delving deeply into this game of percentages. Golf is a game very much where you compete against yourself. So it's one of those games where you build your own capacity and your skill. You can actually compete with other people, but ultimately it is a game against yourself, and that's why I love it. It is an opportunity to go out, to see a bit of greenery, to walk the grounds, to hit a little white ball, and to try and reduce hitting those balls into those holes every time. It is a frustrating game. It is a wonderful game. It is everything that I guess as someone who loves to learn and who's someone who likes to be challenged with different aspects in her life, then I think golf is one of the best games that you can play. If you think also golf, what about in Australia? Golf is everything. A lot of people play golf. We have so many public and private courses because we have such a lot of space. And so golf is a game for everyone, regardless of what background you come from, regardless of how much you get paid. It doesn't really matter. Anyone can play a game of golf. So this book, when I got it, I loved it simply because, look at this. It's got some diagrams in it. And it was written in, I think, the 1960s. And so the story, it's just really about a story of Tony Arbor going around a golf course and giving his advice to the author of the book. And this was very similar to what we did at our golfing program, where some of our mentors also took us around each hole of the course and explained the strategy and the psychology and also the tactics of what we could do. Golf is very much a game of tactics where you can actually, you hit the ball and you determine based on the lay of the land, the wind speed, the obstacles that are in the way, how to play a game to get your ball with the minimum amount of strokes or hits into the little hole at the end. So this is a book that I'm going to enjoy reading. But, these instructional books, you can't read them all from the start to the finish, because there's a lot of advice. And when you get the advice, you need to apply that advice with the actual game. So my intention is to read, say, a chapter and then kind of sit and think about it and then go and actually do what it says on the golf course. I'm very much a player who doesn't use strategy. I just kind of like the freedom of golf. So when I see a bunker ahead of me, I don't see a bunker ahead of me. I'll just try and smash that ball over the bunker and then play the game, whatever happens. If I get in the bunker, I'll play the bunker. I don't care. So my strategy has always been go for the distance and then play your short game to get the ball in the hole. But you know what? He's saying no. And I think a lot of the golfers also were telling me that the way I play the game is technically not the way I should play the game. Lesson learned. All right. Now, the last book that I bought, and I decided to buy this one. It was expensive. I mean, this is $36.99. Okay, call it $37. This is pretty typical of a new book that comes out in Australia around the $37 mark, and also quite large. You probably know this, Anna Fonda, who wrote this book, Wifedom, about the story of George Orwell's wife, and mainly the influence of her onto George Orwell's writing. The reason I bought this one, damn it, there's a sticker. I hate these stickers. Why would they put these stickers on these books? Oh God, I hate them. So we don't know a lot of how much George Orwell's wife influenced his writing. And so what I'm finding is there are a lot of books nowadays where it's calling out the women behind these famous authors and the famous men of the world and just how influential they were in their work. So this is also one that I'm going to read, and the reason I bought it is simply because I've got all of George Orwell's work. So it'd be really interesting to read this. And that is my book haul for now. That's a lot of books, a lot of reading ahead for me in this year and beyond. Let me know what you think with any of these books. Have you read them, or have you read any of these authors and their other books? Please let me know in the comments below. Please share your own recommendations. You know, what have you bought? What did you like about these books? What other books have these authors also done for you? What have been their impact on your life? Thank you for listening, and thank you for watching. Now I'm going to go back to try and finish Kafka on the Shore and try and finally figure out what the hell is happening in this book. Okay then, thank you for listening and thank you for watching. Bye for now.